Everybody, welcome. Hello. Welcome to our awesome event. We are so excited to have you. Hello, good evening, Andrew. It's good to see your face in front of that awesome architecture. I imagine you're in Austin, but it looks like you're in Italy. I love it.
In fake Verona.
Fake Verona. That's a really nice place to be. Welcome, everybody. Laura. Hello, Christine. This is amazing, y'all. And Pat, we have some friends joining that just moved to Utah and wanted to learn about one of the cheesemakers there. And they said, our fridge is already stocked with all the Beehive cheese. Can we just have the link? So we've got some folks on tonight all the way in from Utah, and I'm super pumped about that. We are thrilled to have everybody, all of your smiling faces. You can certainly choose to stay on video, or you can have your video off. This is a no judgment zone, so we'd love to see your faces if you're willing.
I see you.
Oh, hit me right. We've got, this is gonna be such a fun tasting. Pat and I were just hanging out for 20 minutes because we're dear friends, and that's one of the benefits of getting to do this type of event. We're just waiting on a few more folks to join us, and then we'll get kicked out. Hopefully you have all of your cheeses in front of you here. I got my plate. I can't wait. I asked for 2 plates tonight just so I could have another one tomorrow, which is awesome. That's how much I love this cheese. And so because the way a lot of the cheeses share some of the same physical characteristics, we're actually going to be putting our corn nuts where they're plated at the 12 o'clock position tonight and going around clockwise from there. And so your first pairing to the right of the corn nuts will be this little beautiful jar of red jelly. So if you can orient yourself, that will help. And we'll kind of talk, obviously we're going to talk about all the cheeses, we're going to taste, we're going to be full, we're going to be happy, and we get to grill Pat with as many questions as we want. I've got the chat window open on my screen. If anybody is here celebrating something, let us know so we can say what's what. Somebody might be celebrating an anniversary. We had a 50th anniversary on one of our events a couple weeks ago. Birthdays ran just a Wednesday night. It could be a successful fundraising event that was hosted last week by one of you participants for American Gateway. So you could be celebrating that, or just celebrating cheese because it's October 7th. And that's awesome. And so I love the smiling faces. I'm so thrilled to be here. Andrew said all of his corn nuts were scattered on every part of the plate. So the least helpful tip that I could give tonight was to focus on the corn nuts. So instead, hopefully that red jelly jam is on your plate and didn't fall over. That should be in the 1 o'clock position. And so that will be how if that's in the 1 to 3 o'clock position, that will be a good starting place. And if you're drinking something, please let us know so I can maybe point you in the right direction of when to pair, when not to pair, that kind of thing throughout the course of the day. And so thank you for being here. Pat, I am thrilled and honored that you were able to join us tonight. I am so happy and so excited whenever we get to do behind the scenes, particularly when I get to talk to you for so many hours. Pat has been one of my mentors along my journey through cheese. He was the one that invited me to apply to join the board of directors of the American Cheese Society, and really encouraged me to do it, and actually said that I could do it, which is a pretty amazing thing to get that kind of support and encouragement that early in my career. And so I'm grateful for all that time we got to spend on the board. Pat is recognized in our community as being one of the nicest people in our cheese community. You won't find anybody as humble as he is, and somebody that is so passionate about what he does. So you will feel that instantly once I get actually stop showing my face and show Pat's face here in a second. But what I think is really incredible about what Pat has done, there you go, Pat, you're on the big screen, is they and Pat and his family have created iconic products in a very short period of time. So when you think about iconic cheeses, oftentimes they're hundreds of years old. But Pat has created an icon in this industry in just a very short window. And when I say the names of their cheeses, usually everybody that has spent any time in our business or attended an event is, I know that one, that's one of my all-time favorites. And that's an amazing accomplishment for anybody. And I'm just so grateful to have you tonight to get to do this experience. So the way the format of the event works tonight, Pat, is, and for all of you, we're gonna be tasting all 6 cheeses over the course of the next hour and 10 minutes, watching some videos, getting to hear the story from Pat. So welcome, Pat, thanks for being here.
Thank you, John. It's such a pleasure. And this is my favorite thing. I mean, obviously we'd love to all be in person in Austin doing this, but it's just fantastic. And John and I served together on the American Cheese Society board for 6 years. And wow, what a pleasure to serve with John. And what a pleasure for you guys to be able to rub shoulders with him on a daily basis when you go in the shop. And Kendall, we love Kendall. And my granddaughter is named Kendall. And anyway, pretty fun. So Anniversaries, this was crazy. Last weekend, my sister's in-laws just celebrated their 70th anniversary. So can you believe that? They're 94 and in perfect health, both of them. And it was pretty exciting, but pretty fun.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Well, we are excited to talk cheese. We love talking cheese. So
as we get started, Pat, is there one, everybody ought to see that unlike in Austin, Pat has a fire going to stay warm, which is awesome. We haven't yet hit fall weather. We're still working on it. But when you approach tasting cheese, is there any recommendation you might have for folks when approaching an experience like this?
You know, it was interesting. My wife and I had a really beautiful dinner in Scottsdale. This was years and years ago, and there were 2 sommeliers at dinner at that dinner that night. And one of them just would go on for like 10 minutes describing the wines and describing all of these things and what you should and shouldn't do. And it was really interesting. So we listened, and then this next song was talking, and he basically said, "Do you like it? If you like it, it's a great pairing." And I mean, people approach different things when they taste cheese. I'm a real simple approach. I'm like, "Ooh, I like that. That is awesome. I will do that again." And I don't have to go into all elaborate speeches or descriptions. It's kind of like whatever your preference is. Do you like it or don't you? And if you like it, it's good. So anyway,
awesome.
I love cheese. Cristiano Creminelli from Creminelli Salami. Many of you have had their products, beautiful salamis out of Utah as well. But he's like, I asked, "What do you eat salami with?" He said, "Bread, just bread and salami." I mean, pretty simple, but you know, whatever turns you on, whatever's crazy or fun or very simple, just whatever you like. That's the way I approach cheese.
And yet that is not an uncommon response to hear. Some of the best advice I ever got and have been able to give to people along the way is like, what does your stomach say? Yum. And if it says yum, eat more of it. If it says, let's find you a different soul cheese, right? So that's awesome. So one of the things, Pat, that we do in our tasting just to get people's palates lined up is that, and what I want everybody to do, of course, if you are Kevin, you've already eaten all your corn nuts, but so Tamara, I apologize for that in advance. I should have put a little note on the corn nuts that say, "Don't eat all at once." Hopefully you still have some cheese left. But what I want you to do is pick up one of these corn nuts if you've got one, and pinch your nose And while you're pinching your nose, put the corn nut in your mouth and start chewing on it. And pay attention to, keep your nose pinched and pay attention to what's happening on your palate, on your hard palate. Your tongue can pick up 5 things. Don't forget to breathe out through your mouth. Salt, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami. And just pay attention to what's happening. You might get salt, you might get bitter. And then when you feel like you really know what this thing tastes like, release your nose and exhale out through the back of your mouth, through the nose. And this incorporates the olfactory. And so oftentimes what we see in an experience like this is that on your tongue, you're only picking up one maybe component of the experience. And then when it tastes like salt maybe. And then when you open up your olfactory and incorporate it, you might be tasting Frito pie or like really good home popped popcorn, things like that. It's the olfactory presents a lot of taste memories that exist in your personal life. And so each one of us will experience these foods and these flavors very differently. Like Pat said, taste is very subjective and it's all based off of your own physiology and memories. And so take the time to do that throughout the course of the night. Leave the food on your palate for a little longer than you might normally do at dinner. Breathe out as you're trying to do a pairing and see what other combinations of flavors happen. Tonight, we are going to talk about the taste and all those things. But the primary experience for us tonight is to really just get to know Pat. I get to know his operation, his family, get to know his cheese. And so we'll get to ask questions. I'll feed him questions from the chat window. And we'll be playing some videos and stuff. So we are basically guiding the experience. So Pat, thank you for being here. I would love a conversation about the history of Beehive, how it came to be, and then talk about the first cheese, Promontory, tonight. And then we could maybe go and talk about some of the animals, if that sounds good.
Perfect. So Beehive Cheese, we are small. We're family operated, family owned. My brother-in-law called me up in 2004, and I was literally on my way to do some business in Florida. And he said, let's quit our jobs and go make cheese. And I laughed, he laughed, we laughed together. And then he says, but I'm actually quite serious. And I says, well, okay. And so he kind of explained himself for 10 minutes while I was driving to the airport. And as I was flying to Florida that night, I looked down at those little houses and I thought, I wonder if we start making cheese, if that house right down there will ever eat my cheese. And due to Antonelli's cheese shop, I'm sure I flew over Texas somewhere. You know, there's a chance that that's the case. And so, wow, it was a nuts story. We both were just at a perfect pivotal time in our lives, in our business lives, and we quit our jobs and we went up to Utah State. We took a 4-day cheese making course in cheese making, and we came home and we started making cheese. We had 8 days worth of experience of cheese making from lab books. We actually spent 1 day in the lab making cheese, and we started making cheese. And it was totally nuts. My wife, my sister just said, you guys are nuts, but you know what? We'll support you. Let's see what we can do. It's pretty fun. But going back to Utah State, after they realized that we were serious, we actually had a business plan. We had had some success in a previous life, previous business lives. They approached us and said, hey, we've got a recipe that we've been working on here at the Utah State for like literally 40 years. And it was called Old Juniper. And they gave us that recipe, and that recipe is Promontory. So this cheese is via Utah State, a gift. They're a land grant school, and part of their charter is to transfer technology to the private sector. And so they gave us a gift of Promontory, and that's how we started making cheese.
Well, let's taste it. I did not know that. That is super cool. So it's a 60-year-old recipe now.
It is. And Promontory, I think the unique characteristic, when you pop this in your mouth and you start tasting it, I wish we could interact a little bit more, but John, you'll have to be the audience for the rest of the people. But what's the first thing that comes to be when you taste it?
And they've got the chat window open, so if anybody wants to say what they taste, besides happiness, that could be an answer. I haven't yet tasted it. I'm still typing in. What is everybody tasting on the first cheese? This is Promontory. It's the cheese that's directly to the left of the red jam. So in case you're curious. All right. All right. You can smell good cream in it. There's some nice salt.
One thing, and I'll just jump in while you're still savoring and enjoying. It's going to evolve in your mouth. It will transform. It'll morph. It changes. It's pretty complex. There's a lot of sensory going on there.
The texture is beautiful tonight. Almost like a fudge. You have to chew through it a little bit, but then it melts into a cream on your palate. I taste grass on it tonight. There's a nice acidity, which is pleasant on the sides of the tongue. It like dries out the side of my tongue a little bit, which is really fun and pleasant. But it's tasting great tonight and creamy. So this is your flagship cheese.
It really is. It's one of a lot of people, will go to trade shows, we'll go to the fancy food show and whatnot. And people always ask, what's new, what's new? And I laugh and I kind of kiddingly say, well, Promontory, you should try this. And they'll taste it and they'll say, well, I've never had that. And I'll say, well, this is the base cheese from which all the rest of the cheeses you will eat tonight are made. So it's our base cheese. It's our most award-winning cheese. And people don't know it because it's just kind of plain. It's a white cheddar. It's nothing sexy or glamorous or out of the box. It's just fairly benign, but it's wonderful.
Yeah, and again, the flavor is outstanding. So what were you and Tim doing before? What were you doing on your way to Florida?
I was on my way to deliver a fire engine to Park City Fire Department. I built and sold fire engines for a short time. I was a real estate developer for many years. Tim was a software developer, so totally unrelated. Tim has always been a foodie his whole life. He's a great cook. I wouldn't call him a chef, but he's an amazing cook. And I was in sales. He was in finance and business and software. And so kind of the way we've evolved over the years is I'm the sales guy. He's the operations guy, kind of the behind the scenes guy. And it's just been we mowed our way through college. We had a landscaping company together. So we've been in business together for like 30 years. It's pretty crazy.
That's cool. So, yeah. So you knew you worked well. You knew that it was a good fit.
Yeah.
How many days, weeks, months of mistake cheese did you have to go through before Iowa State stepped in to provide you with this gem?
So, you know what? When we first tried to get Utah State, not Iowa State, Utah State.
I'm sorry, Utah.
It's all good.
Wrong state.
We had a hard time even getting an appointment with them because they were in big business. You've seen the Got Milk commercials and whatnot. A lot of the funding goes to 5 different research institutions around the country. And Utah State is actually one of those. And when we went up there and told them we wanted to make artisan cheese, they kind of looked sideways at us and they didn't even know what artisan cheese was at the time. I mean, if you think about it, you think about the Beechers of the world, the Point Race. Cypress has been around a while, and Vermont Creamery and whatnot, but there's a ton of us that started right around the turn of the century. So there were a lot of brand new cheesemakers in the space, and it wasn't really a space yet. People didn't even know that it was existing. So there was a real renaissance that happened in about the 2000 timeframe. So, you know, to their credit, they didn't even know this thing was on the cusp of happening, but it obviously has happened.
That's cool. So you were like the first one to knock on their door.
We were, and they were excited, and they said, you know, just to give you an example, they used to give a short course in cheese making, and it was always an industrial cheese making course. When we started, the year after we started, they started doing artisan cheese short courses, and that's all they do now. They don't even do the industrial anymore. So it was kind of fun.
That's the impact that you have had already on the cheese, and that was immediate. You had impacted the dairy industry in Utah overnight by just showing up, basically, and then actually going forward with it. That's amazing. So
when we were up there at Utah State at our short course, we rented their facility, and we started making cheese because we knew we would need some cheese to sell once we finally opened the doors, because we were in the process of building our creamery at the time. But we rented their creamery, and I think we made about 800 pounds of cheese in their creamery with their cows. And it was fascinating because as soon as we opened up our creamery in September of 2005, we knew new cows, new creamery, new equipment. We would compare the cheese that we made at Utah State with the cheese that we made, and it was both of them were great, but they were very different, and it was pretty interesting to see how different they were. And it was mostly the cow's milk. Our new cow's milk was Jersey cow's milk versus Holstein, and anyway, it was pretty drastic. It was fun.
Let me show some of the Wade's Dairy footage that we have so folks can see the current animals that are making our delicious cheeses. So this is you with the dairyman.
Yep, Clint Wade. We called up our ag inspector, and we told him we wanted Jersey cow's milk and we wanted it close. And our ag inspector just smiled and laughed, and he took us on a field trip to meet Clint Wade. And that was back in 2005. And we have been using their milk exclusively since the beginning. And what a great partnership it's been. Clint has been in the dairy business for 4 generations. They make beautiful milk, and we make cheese.
Nice. So these are the jerseys. We saw the babies there at the beginning.
Yeah, this one right here is a Guernsey, but mostly they have some Holsteins, they have some Guernsey, but mostly Jersey. And the question is, why Jersey? If I bring in 10 pounds of milk, I end up with 1 pound of cheese. And this little girl here is going to give me in the winter about 5.2% milk fat, as compared to the one on the right there, that Holstein cow, the black and white. She's going to give me about 3.5% milk fat. So I love lots of fat, because the more fat and protein in the milk, the more cheese I get out of each pound of milk.
God, is that a rotating?
It is. It's a merry-go-round, we call it.
Is that a type that floats on water?
No, I don't believe it does, but it goes around in a circle, and it takes, I think, about 12 minutes to go around, and they get milked based on going in, and it's pretty fun to watch.
And is it just because it's a merry-go-round? So, y'all, that's pretty rare to see. I did not know that, Pat. That's super cool. Very rarely, I've only seen 2 circular milking parlors. And so the cows enter on one side, and then they step off backwards or forwards?
Yep. They walk in, straight in, and they all have chips in their ears. So the computer knows exactly what cow they're expecting. They know what flow she gives, how many gallons in that 12 minutes in their going around the merry-go-round, how much milk she'll give. If she doesn't give the allotted amount of milk that she's used to giving, they'll tag her and they'll check her out, find out what's going on. Pretty amazing how those, this happened, I can't remember, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but Clint was saying how quickly they get accustomed. They go on, they go around, they back out, away they go. So it's pretty amazing the technologies that they have nowadays.
Yeah, and it's way less steps. I imagine they have all these mats because he walks here, but on perfect days, I bet he doesn't have to make more than 2 or 3 steps at a time.
Yeah, they do amazing. Yeah, the cows are amazing. And you know, it's kind of fun. Kind of what our philosophy was we want to make cheese the old fashioned way, but then we want to do some new world technology. I mean, Rogue Creamery, Fiscalini, Point Reyes, Sweetgrass Dairy, all of these guys are using technology to their advantage. One thing that David from Rogue said to me, he said they can, from taking the salinity of the milk, they can do a somatic cell count. They can tell how healthy the cow is, or if she has a fever, or I mean, there's amazing things that can be taken. Just like when we put the little blood oxygen level on our finger, they can do that same thing with the udder, and they can tell the salinity of the milk. If there's too much salt, they know something's wrong. They'll pull her aside and take care of her. So milk is critical. We have a beautiful milk source, and so we're very lucky that way.
That's beautiful, and it seems like they're a family-run business as well. So again,
they definitely are. They are.
So all right, I'll stop share. We'll go back to you, Pat. That was cool. So I've only seen one other circular, and it was actually on like it floated in water.
Oh, that's cool.
And had it was like a 15 horsepower little motor that moved it. It was like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's amazing. So that is amazing where you get the milk. And you did, Scott had a question about why Jersey cows versus others. So you've already hit that off. If anybody else has any questions about the animals, otherwise we have an opportunity to eat Sea Hive, which was one of the few cheeses I knew we were going to have in our shop the day we opened. That was important to me and important to who I thought my customers would be, and we got it right. So I've got a piece of Sea Hive. On the exterior, you'll see a slight white-ish coating on the rind. And so it's right next to the cup of honey. So on that last cheese, we paired it with a strawberry jelly from Jam Nation in California. Sadly, Jillian, due to the pandemic and the wildfires, has had to close her business. So these are our last jars of this product. Trying to figure out how to support her. So we wanted to spotlight her tonight. She's awesome. But then now we've got our delicious Sea Hive. So Pat, if you want to.
So Sea Hive, this is what's on my license plate on my truck. It's Sea Hive. So when we started making Promontory, again, beautiful cheese, awesome cheese. There's some amazing white cheddars out there. Amazing, amazing. It was about January of 2006, after we had been making cheese for about 3 months. And we thought, you know what? We want to be in a niche market. We don't want to just make a white cheddar that's going to compete with the Cabots of the world, Tillamook's, whatever. So Tim had this crazy idea to rub coffee on the cheese, and which we'll taste later. And I had the idea of making a very Utah cheese, lots of salt from the Great Salt Lake. Utah's the beehive state. And so we thought, let's rub some honey and salt on this cheese and see what happens. We did. And we kind of forgot about it for a while, tasted it after about 8 months. And we were very, very happy with this cheese. One of the things, you guys, I'm sure, John, you're familiar with Mary Quick with Quick's Cheddar, who's been a judge at ACS forever. But one of the compliments that Mary gave me, they've been in the cheddar making business for like 400 years in London, in England. She said, Pat, I love your cheeses because I'm buying cheese and your cheeses are balanced. And when you put stuff on the cheese, you're not buying that stuff. You're buying the cheese that's enhanced by the different flavors. So she said, I really like the Sea Hive because it's balanced, and I love it. When you taste Promontory side by side with Sea Hive, it's not a drastic difference. You're not going to get savory. You're not going to get sweet with the Sea Hive. But both honey and salt are desiccants. They will draw moisture out of things. And so you'll notice that it's a little bit drier, and it's balanced, and it's different, and it's wonderful. If we had a Honey Crisp apple right now, and you were to have this cheese side by side, your saliva wouldn't be able to keep up. It's really a good pairing. So apples and the Sea Hive.
And it's so good. I think what's amazing about when you rub the outside of a cheese is that some of those aromatics sort of impart themselves in the interior. So you're getting, if you breathe out through your nose, your olfactory may pick up hints of that honey. It's a wildflower honey from if I'm not mistaken. And then how long does it typically sit on the outside of the cheese before you open it and cut it and sell it?
The Sea Hive is actually one of our oldest cheeses. The honey and the salt, as I said, are desiccants. They will wick the moisture out of the cheese. And because we're in Utah, a humid day in Utah in the winter is about 5 to 8% humidity. And if you can even imagine trying to open air age this cheese in Utah, it's impossible. We would get these fissure cracks in the cheese. It just would not do it. So we actually age our cheeses in plastic. So cryovac plastic is the rind. And so with Sea Hive, it draws the moisture out. This wheel of cheese is basically floating in a liquid that it's extracted from the cheese, and it's when we first did it, we thought, oh, that's not going to be any good. And we thought, you know what, we'll be patient. We left it alone. That moisture goes back into the cheese at about 8 months. And then that's when the magic happens. And that's when the cheese. So if we had given up on that cheese because of the liquid at the first, we would not have ever had Sea Hive.
That's awesome. Carrie just said in the chat window that Sea Hive was the cheese that made her an Antonelli's customer for life. So that's 10 years ago. So thank you for sticking with the Sea Hive recipe. I love it. It's always got a place. The Redmond real salt, again, you're choosing to work locally and support that your community. And I just think it's great. So it's amazing that you can see the moisture be reabsorbed back into the cheese. Man, I didn't realize Utah had such low humidity. That makes sense.
Oh, it's so dry. We actually went down to Redmond. It's in the middle of the state. So all of you have heard of the Sundance Film Festival. The Sundance Sea used to be in the middle of Utah, and it went extinct. And when it did, it left this strata of salt, and they actually mine that salt. We took a few wheels of this down to the Redmond mine and tried aging it in the mine. And it was a bad experiment. It was too warm and it didn't age properly, but that would have been cool. Would have been a cool story, but it didn't work. So
that would have been awesome. So you talked about white cheddar a couple times. I do have some video, Pat, if you want to I've got 2 videos lined up. One is sort of a virtual tour of the cheese make space. Then we actually have a picture video, a set of pictures that show the cheddar making process. So this first one that y'all will see is a video that we made a couple days ago this is what the cheese make room looks like. And if you want to talk about the vats, that we've got 2 here.
Yep. So the one on the left is a vat, and the one on the right there is what they call a finishing table. The difference being the one on the right will have a drain down the center of it with a screen on it. And that you can see right down the middle, there's a drain, and that's called a finishing table. And those slabs of cheese right there are being cheddared. That is a verb. That's a term that's actually an action. We're flipping those slabs over and stacking them too high. And then the vat on the left is the next batch of cheese. It's kind of cool. We'll have two batches going side by side. And thus we're able to, instead of it taking us about 5 hours to make a batch of cheese, we start on the left in the vat. At about halfway through, we pump it over into the finishing table. We drain the whey. We clean out the vat on the left, fill it full of milk again. So now we have two vats going side by side, and we're able to get more production out of it that way. We get our milk at 2 a.m. We start making milk at 2 a.m. And by the end of the day, we have made 4 batches of cheese, and every pound of cheese, we bring in about 48,000 pounds of cheese. All of that milk, or 48,000 pounds of milk, all of that milk is cheese by 8 o'clock that night. So we never have milk sitting around for more than about 12 hours. The question was something about cheddaring?
Well, and maybe it's a great question. It's cheddar. How does cheddaring affect flavor, texture, or both? Maybe
Okay.
in the next set, we have the actual pictures of the steps. And
Yep.
maybe that'll be a good time to talk about it.
Let's do that,
So,
because that's a fantastic question.
so the humidity in this room is going to be incredibly high.
It is high because it's warm and moist, and you got things going on. So those vats, I don't know if you've ever seen a vat, but it's like a double boiler. If you ever heat up chocolate, you put a boiling pan of water, and then you put another pan inside of it so that it will not scald. Well, that vat is heat jacketed with water, and we inject steam into that water, and it just warms up the vat just really nice and slow. And it's also a very exact, you can bring the temperatures up exactly within a degree of where you want it to be. That's the press right there where we take the cheese out of the finishing table, and on the very left there you'll see the hoops.
Are
We line them up. Yep.
do these already have cheese in them?
Those have cheese in them, and then we press those, and we'll press them for about 4 hours in between vats. And then as soon as they come out of the press, then they'll go in the other room. But those are the slabs of cheese, and that is in the process of being cheddared. We'll flip those slabs over every 10 minutes for about 2 hours. They'll come out of the hoops, the wheels do, and in the back, you can see the back, that's the pasteurizer on the left back there. Those are some little pots that we cook mozzarella or cook ricotta in.
And
Yep, there's the pasteurizer back there.
And this is a set of tubes. So this is, some pasteurizers would be a big vat that is warms the milk. And then this is a set of tubes that allow that pasteurization to happen in a more efficient manner, correct?
Yep, those are high temperature, short time pasteurization. These little pots here, we call those dolly. There's 2 of them side by side, and those are steam jacketed as well. And we're cooking some ricotta in those now. It's pretty fun.
Oh, that's fun. So yeah, so this is the whole space where all of
That's
gets.
it.
It's amazing.
Yep, not too big. Go ahead and fast forward a little bit.
We're about to jump in.
And this is our cut room. So those wheels of cheese will come out of the press. You can stop right there, John. Or keep going right to the left there. Right there. So it becomes barely buzzed within an hour of it coming out of the press. We rub that cheese. We package it in the cryovac, and it is done. It is made, other than the aging. So we bring it straight out of the press. If we're making Big John's Cajun, we coat it with the Cajun spice. If we're making Barely Buzzed, we rub it right there on the spot, and we do not touch that cheese again, other than aging and turning and flipping and such, but it's done.
It's amazing.
So if you think about it, if you think of going, if you put, a beautiful piece of burrata in your refrigerator, if it were unopened, that burrata is going to absorb the flavors in the fridge. And because our cheese has such high fat content, it is going to absorb the flavors that we put on that cheese, and it's going to take those flavors all the way to the center of the cheese.
So you see these little guys right here, y'all?
Yep,
It looks like the heart of the cheese.
they totally are right there.
You can see that whole, we learned about that on our last behind the scenes. I did not know that cheesemakers do that to make equal portions. What a new lesson for me. And then, so that creates very consistent sizes, but I had never seen that before until the Point Reyes behind the scenes.
Yep, and we donate most of those hearts to the local food bank. They absolutely love them.
That's awesome.
So we do a lot of donating that way.
So then we've got the vacuum sealer.
Yep.
I want to jump over to the video we have of the pictures so that we can talk about cheddaring a little bit. This is Pat, and it includes that, does cheddaring affect the flavor? So these are basically every 6 seconds. So this is going to be the milk. This is the culture, or is this the rennet?
I don't see the screen, John.
Oh, you're not. Oh, I'm just watching a video by myself. It was a great video. All right, here we go. Way better. Can you see it now?
Yeah, I'll have you pause it if I need you to.
All right.
So fill the vat full of milk after it's been pasteurized. That would be the rennet. And so we'll add the rennet. And so pause it right there, John. So it's pretty cool. So our vats are about 16,000 pounds of milk. And if you can imagine putting about a cup of rennet in that vat, that is what coagulates the vat. It's pretty fascinating. But what's going on right here is when you add your rennet, you are able to, it takes about 30 minutes until that milk turns into a custard style yogurt. And the way that you know that it's perfect and ready to cut is you'll take a knife and you'll run it through the curd. You'll slice it, you'll turn the knife sideways, and then you run the knife sideways back through the slit that you've just made. And if it tears in a jagged line, it's not ready to cut. Whereas if you've ever seen ice split like on a lake, if it splits, it just goes in a straight line. If you run the knife back through the slit and it cuts in a straight line, it streaks in a straight line, you know the curd is ready to cut. You've got about a 2-minute window right here. If you cut it late, you are in trouble, or if you cut it early, you're in trouble. So that's a pretty fascinating part of cheese making right there. You can keep going.
So cool. I didn't realize the window was that short. And here's them cutting.
They are running the harps through the curd. One's horizontal, one's vertical. You run it through the curd, it cuts the curd horizontally, and then they swap the curd, they swap the hoops, and so now it cuts it into 1/4-inch cubes. And then what's going on here is after you cut it,
Pat, when you say harp, I just want to go back for a second. When you say harp, there's like, picture lots of guitar wires running up and down vertically, and that's what's cutting this curd into blocks.
Yep, it looks just like a harp.
Yeah.
And then after you cut the curd, you will rest it for about 5 minutes before you do anything. And the whey will start to float up and the curd will start to drop down. And then you stir it. And then what's happening here is we are transferring it from the vat over to the finishing table. So keep going.
This is the finishing table in front of us.
Yep, and that's the finishing table, and down the middle there's a trench with a screen on it so it does not allow the curd to go away. We'll drain it all out, and then we'll just push it around with the rakes and try to make it into nice, flat, even slabs. So that's what's happening there. And then as soon as the whey is gone, they'll cut it in strips that are manageable, and so stop right there. So what's going on right here is the curd is losing moisture. It's continuing to come out of the slabs, going down into that trench. The whey, by the way, goes back to the dairy. They feed it as a protein supplement, and so we have no waste. But what's going on there is the moisture's coming out and the bacteria are absolutely having a party. They are making acid like there's no tomorrow. And so the reason we cheddar is we have to get the moisture out of the cheese and we have to wait for the pH to be perfect. And so that's what's happening there. If we let the pH go too low, it will ruin the cheese. And that's why we cheddar. And as soon as we have the pH perfect, then keep going, John. We'll take those slabs and we will mill them in a curd mill. That's a curd mill right there. They'll run the slabs through, it cuts it into curds. And what we're doing is we're creating a lot of surface area. And the surface area is so that when we introduce salt to the curd, the salt stops the bacteria from making any more acid. It does not kill them, but it puts them in a state where they cannot make any more acid. Then we take the cheese curds, pile it into the hoops. We weigh the hoops so that they're nice and consistent. And then we take those hoops and we'll put them in the press. And the press pushes those curds back into a nice solid state. And then in this case, we rubbed coffee on it and away we go. Did that answer the question on why we cheddar, hopefully?
Yeah, does it affect flavor? Yes, I would say one of the main differences between cheddar and other cheeses is that on most other cheeses, salt is applied to the exterior of the cheese, and cheddar is one of the few where the salt is actually added to the center of the cheese. So you get a much different curd development and flavor profile depending on the process. And of course, then you have cheddars that are aged in cryovac versus cheddars that are aged in cloth. Then that can also add a layer. But for sure, texture and flavor are way different because you're adding the salt into the heart of the cheese.
So it was really interesting, John. We all know Sid Cook with Car Valley Cheese, or you know him from ACS, but I asked him once when I was very young, and I said, what's the most important step of cheese making? And he was patient with me and laughed a little bit because that was a kind of a stupid question. But he said, Pat, the most important step in cheese making is the step that you're at right now. Because if you mess that up, it doesn't matter what you do down the road, you are not going to be able to fix it. So every step has to be done when it's supposed to be done in the right order. And if it's done that way, they end up with a really nice cheese. If you get out of order and you try to rush things or whatever, it messes it all up. So
not a bad bit of advice from a 4th generation cheesemaker.
Yeah, right.
Pretty amazing. So we're on to pour me a slice, and this cheese is close to my heart, and so if you'd like to chat about it, this is a cool thing that you did.
So we got a phone call from John in the fall of 18. He says, I've got some friends here from Basil Hayden Bourbon, and they want to make a collaborative cheese with somebody. Do you want to talk? And I said, absolutely. And we called them, and this cheese was born of John recommending it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been an amazing cheese. Kind of one of our rules of thumb when we put something on a cheese and we taste it, if we don't do back handsprings when we taste it the first time, then we just discard it and say that was a bad idea, it didn't work. This cheese is, in my opinion, one of the best cheeses we've ever made. The Basil Hayden is got a sweetness to it. Our cheese has a sweetness to it. The creaminess of the cheese cuts the alcohol. It's an amazing cheese, and Basil Hayden has been a joy to work with. It's been awesome. So talk about this cheese, John, and I'll shut up for a minute.
Well, the flavor, mine's all gone. I ate it all, and it went fast. I particularly like it because you actually get the sort of the barrel flavor profiles that you would have if you were having the actual drink. But the cheddar doesn't get lost. It doesn't hide. It's right there. It's front and center. Tastes like you're having a really nice after dinner dessert. like a, and so I quite enjoy it. But basically, they had invited us to do their it was Basil Hayden's Friendsgiving here in Austin, and they said they were trying to work on marketing that it's a great pairing for cheese. And I said, of course it's a great pairing for cheese, but wouldn't it be great if it was on a cheese? And immediately thought of you because of the way that you are able to incorporate flavor profiles that, if in the wrong hands, would be abused and overused. And so, because there are other companies that do rubs and flavor added, but they often taste way one-dimensional. And so, so I was super happy. I didn't know you guys actually went through with it until you sent me some cheese, and I got to eat it. And so there might be a couple places in the country you can buy this, but for the most part, isn't it just on your website?
Well, Kroger now. Literally, we're shipping to every Kroger store in America next week. It's the featured cheese in November for Kroger, but it's just been an amazing cheese. And again, it was such a pleasure to work with the Basil Hayden folks. We went out to New York the day before Thanksgiving last year to kind of roll it out in earnest with some press folks. It was a beautiful dinner, beautiful night. And the next day it was in Forbes magazine about this partnership with Beam Suntory, Basil Hayden, and this little obscure cheesemaker in Utah. So beautiful cheese. This one is going to be around for a minute. And it's really fun to have a cheese that when you taste it for the first time, you say, wow, that's really good.
It's amazing. And they're good people. So it is a nice partnership.
Yeah.
While folks are enjoying that, we still have 3 cheeses left. As I said, we'll try to be done with eating by like 7:10-ish. But while we are, do you want to talk about the Barely Buzzed now too? And then I've got some other video that we can watch.
Yep. So Barely Buzzed, I mentioned, those were the first of 2 experiments, the Beehive and the Barely Buzzed. We rubbed it on it. We called Utah State. We said, we rubbed coffee on cheese. First thing they said is, you can't do that. And we said, why? They said, well, it's the acid of this. And they went on to all this stuff. And we said, why don't you come down and try it? Because we kind of like it. So they did. They tasted it. And then they kind of said, well, whatever. I guess it's okay to do it. So we went up to the American Cheese Society competition in Portland that year. We had made 2 3-pound wheels of this cheese in February. August, ACS rolls around, and we take it up there. We run into a few folks, a guy from Austin, you know him, John. It's Edward Damez from Central Market. He tasted it, honestly, on the spot, bought cheese for a holiday. And so we ran home, we started making it. First batch of cheese that we made, we pulled a wheel off to enter in the competition, because you have to be in production for a year with the ACS rules before you can enter it in the competition, as you well know. And so Burlington rolls around the next year. Next thing we know, the silly, crazy coffee cheese from Utah takes first place, and it just becomes kind of an overnight phenomenon. It is what it is. You taste it and you say, I got to have more. So pretty fun.
It's not just coffee.
Coffee and lavender.
A little bit of lavender on the outside, so you get that real aromatic, and it makes you feel comfortable and happy. So Jack said this has been one of his favorites for years. Christine is saying that it's a love cheese for her and her daughter. But this is when I think when I was introducing you and talking about an iconic cheese. This is an iconic cheese. I would say most people have probably had the coffee cheese, whether they know it by name or not. Most people would probably have tasted this at some point in their life. This is probably the one that's been in all those houses that you used to fly over.
Right. Can I tell a story about Barely Buzzed, John, real quick?
It's your show, my friend.
So if you try this cheese, start with just the paste. You're going to get a little bit of creamy, beautiful coffee, but you're not going to get a ton of lavender. Lavender is not a fat soluble substance, so it will not basically go into the cheese like the coffee does. Coffee transfers through the fat into the cheese. But we were at the fancy food show waiting for a cab, ran into a guy from Sweden. He had a big Swiss cross on his name badge, but he was a Gruyere importer. We were just chatting. He said, "What do you do?" I said, "We make this goofy cheese from Utah. It's called Barely Buzzed. It has coffee on it." And he kind of looked at me funny and he said, "I know this cheese." He said, "I was in New York at the fancy food show eating at a restaurant, Brian's restaurant, Casa Lula, you know it, John. Anyway, out comes this cheese tray with the Barely Buzzed on it. And he and his buddy, he goes into this tirade about these Americans doing all these things to their blessed cheese. He said, "These stinking Americans, how can they do such a thing?" And his buddy basically says, "Shut up. It wouldn't be on the cheese board if it wasn't good. So why don't you just try it?" So he tries it. He's pensive. He thinks. And he says, "These brilliant Americans are doing things with cheese that they would be lynched for in their country because you can't, like the Utah State said, you can't put coffee on cheese." And so thus the revolution. It's like, do you like it? Does it taste good? Will you eat it again? And, you know, our fear after we won was that it would be this flash in the pan, one hit wonder and gone. And I tell you, if Beehive cheese lasts for 50 years, Barely Buzzed will be around in 50 years. So
I
anyway.
like that. And what we didn't yet say it, I typed it into the thing. Definitely eat the rinds, right? Take a nice bite of cheese with the rind, and you will definitely, that lavender is so aromatic. It will linger on your palate. All of the rinds are edible on these cheeses, and they're delicious. And they showcase quite a different experience than just eating the paste. I've got a great video here, Pat, that I wanted to show. This is a time-lapse video of the cheese making process. I thought it was awesome that you guys put this together. So here we
Perfect.
go. It's only 30 seconds. So this is what it looks like when they're moving the milk to the finishing table and getting started with a new batch.
Takes about an hour to pasteurize a batch of cheese. Takes about an hour and a half for the cheddaring to take place. So we don't have a lot of time in between. We're gonna hoop this here in a second. There's the salt, there's the hooping. Then we're gonna
you do that
clean that vat and get ready for the next one.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I love it. So we have, we've got the Barely Buzzed. While we're talking about the apple walnut smoked, I've got some video just of the packing room that I'll play, and I've got some video of the store, some of the rest of the facility.
Okay.
So I'll play these if you want to talk about the smoking process.
I will do that. So Barely Buzzed, one more thing before we move on. Try that with a red wine or a dark beer. The red wine, it will bring out the lavender, amazing. So that's awesome. Our apple walnut smoked is our anything ham cheese. It goes anything ham, prosciutto, salami, egg omelet, ham and egg omelet. It's really, really great with anything pork. It's a very, very subtle smoke. It's not strong, and that's what I like about it. This cheese did take first place at American Cheese Society last year. And again, it's very subtle. At first, when you taste it, you'll say, "There's no smoke on that." And then you'll let it linger on your tongue. And then you'll end up with just a hint of sweetness of smoke that will come about at the end. Try this one with ham.
Why did you choose apple walnut?
You know what? Again, I had an apple tree in my backyard and a walnut tree in my backyard. So anyway, that was our very first thought, and we tried it, and it just worked.
Did you do wood from those two trees or bring it in separately?
We did originally, and now we bring in just the wood chunks. It's walnut wood, not walnut shells, and it's apple wood. So we buy little chunks of it now and we smoke it. But honestly, we cold smoke and it goes pretty quick. This cooler here is the Borg. It's one of our finishing coolers. Just kind of walking around the plant, the creamery.
And
Maybe.
Yeah, we're getting the lights on.
There you go. Lights are good. This is one of our shipping coolers, and
So our pallet of cheese is going to live in here for a few hours.
yep, it will while it's being made up, and then it'll be shipped to you. You guys, in the meantime, while we're doing this, send in some questions, please.
Yeah.
That would be good. This is our cooler where our cultures live. You just saw it for a second there on the right. We keep our cultures at 54 degrees below zero right there. And they're asleep until we put them in the nice 88-degree milk. And then they wake up and they say, wow, this is way better than the freezer. And then they work their magic.
And those are the little cheese hearts right over here.
Yep, those are the hearts. Yep.
We've paired this with a balsamic onion,
Oh, that sounds good.
which is delicious. And then, so this is all, these are cut down into the portion size. It looks like some boxes are probably the cuts, and then these ones look like they're whole wheels.
Yep. So we more or less cut to order. We'll get an order like on a, let's just say a Wednesday, and we will cut them to order, and then we will ship them out typically the next Friday. So about 7 days we have to fill an order. So all of this cheese is going to go away within a week or two of it being cut. And so our shipping manager, who's Tim's boy, Hayden, he'll go in and say, oh, I need 50 of these and 20 of these and 30 of these, and he'll build pallets and out they go.
Are these the cheese curds?
Those are yep, those are cheese curds.
Nice.
And we do sell those bulk as well. And then there's some wedges. That one there on the left is a truffle hive, which go back just a smidge, John, if you can. It's pretty fun. It looks like a black and white cow. We take Carpaccio truffles and we put them on the outside of the cheese, and we sell that one at the holiday, and it's really a good cheese.
I've got a question here, Pat.
Yep.
How many pounds of cheese do you ship annually from your creamery?
We will ship about 700,000 pounds this year.
That's awesome. I wish all of that could get into my belly. And then we did have a question that are you working on any top secret new cheese flavor combinations?
Yeah, promontory. I'm just joking.
Still working on it, huh?
You know what? We're always working on them, and it's funny. There's a grocery store chain in Utah called Harmon's Grocery, and they come in every year with their cheesemongers, and we have kind of a competition to see who can come up with a new cheese. And one of the reasons Mariah does that is she lets the cheesemongers know how difficult it is to get a winner. Like I said, if we don't do back handsprings when we taste a cheese, it doesn't make the grade. And it's hard. It's hard to get those combinations. And so we're always working on some new things. Like I said, we are doing a ricotta that we're selling locally right now that's fantastic. Made from our whey that otherwise would just go away and go back to the cows. But we try to introduce about a cheese every other year. So really, we don't have a ton of new cheeses that come out. But when they do, the last two we've come out with was Pour Me a Slice and the Red Butte Hatch Chili. They are real winners if they make it to that point.
I think I just showed, this was the one I just showed. All right, we have caught up on those videos. Awesome. So yeah, well, that Pour Me a Slice in the Red Butte. This will be my first time eating the Red Butte.
Oh, fun. You're going to like it.
And so one of the things that I admired getting it when I got a chance to come and tour the facility was, it's very much a family-run business, right? And so one of the things that y'all really want to do is take care of everybody because everybody is part of your family. And so
Right.
not only do your actual family work there, but your chosen now family works there too. So this is just, your family lunch, which you do every day. So
Yep, 4 days a week. Heather cooks for us, and we all come. And with stupid COVID, it's been harder to sit down all together. We have to take shifts and whatnot. But she makes amazing soups and chilies and spaghetti and grilled cheese sandwiches and whatnot. But we all sit down every 4 days a week together and we eat. And it's a bonding, awesome time for all of us. We really like it. It's fun. That's
it's not exactly cheese specific, but you said happy cows make happy cheese, right? Happy cheese makers make really delicious cheese. And so I've only known a few companies that actually do the family style lunches like that. And I always admire them. And so it's just something that I'm sort of proud of. And then the last, well, why don't we talk about Red Butte? And really, we have a question here from Scott that said, how much demand do you have in Utah versus anywhere else in the country?
That's a great comment. I'll get to that in a second. So Harmon's, this was actually one of the experiments that worked. Harmon's, one of their cheesemongers, brought hatch chilies to the table. We ended up refining them a little bit. One of the things that's unique about this cheese is we do have stuff. We have chilies in the paste of the cheese. Typically, it's just on the outside. But we bring in fresh New Mexico hatch chilies, and we put them in the paste of the cheese. So when we're salting the curd, we introduce the hatch chilies, and then we press it back into the wheel. So the fresh hatch green chilies are in the inside of the wheel, and on the outside, if you've ever been to a market in New Mexico, they'll have great big clusters of hatch chilies. I'm sure they have a name, where they're hanging upside down. They've been roasted and they're red. They're gorgeous. So we'll take those roasted red peppers, grind them, apply them to the outside of the cheese. So this has a kind of a fresh green sweet chili on the inside. On the outside, you get a little bit of a smoky roasted hatch chili flavor on the outside. So I love that. And Harmon's, we worked with them on this development, and we sold it exclusively to their stores for about the first 2 years of its life. And the reason it's called Red Butte Hatch Chili is there's a local garden at the University of Utah. You guys are missing the presidential debate. That's awesome. I think it's actually at the University of Utah tonight. We donate 3% of the sales of this cheese to Red Butte Gardens every year. But after 2 years of we selling this cheese to Harmon's, they said, you can sell that elsewhere now. And so we did. So we sell a ton of cheese in Utah, but we sell a ton of cheese everywhere else now as well. So there's the answer to that question.
That is a delicious cheese. That's my
Isn't that
first
good?
That makes me so happy. It's got the smokiness to it. You can taste that. The texture of the chilies is nice. It's so good. At least one person commented, Pat, that they'd rather listen to us talking tonight than the debate.
I hope so. I hope so.
I appreciate that. That is super good. And a couple people asked where they can buy the cheese hearts, and I reminded them that they go to the food bank. So, but that's a beautiful cheese. So, are you taking customer suggestions on new food flavor combinations?
Always.
Always. I love it. Now, I know what to spend my time thinking about at 2:30 in the morning when I can't sleep. It'll come to me.
We'll name it John's I don't know, John something.
We'll come up with something.
Do you remember it was funny, do you remember Tia? John, there was a gal named Tia. Yeah. She was a cheesemonger, and there was also a gal named Delight. And at the same time, they both suggested that we do a rose cheese, a rose hips cheese, or a whatever cheese. And if it had have come to pass, it didn't. We were going to name it Tia's Delight because they both suggested it at the same time. But
That's awesome. So do we come up with the name first? That's fun, and then come up with a flavor for it, or does it matter?
we don't care. Usually the cheese is the first thing.
That's awesome. Well,
But I love that cheese. That cheese is ooey gooey, melty, and everything. You can melt it anywhere you want. It's awesome.
so the last video I have, we're almost up to 7:15. So if anybody has any other questions for Pat, man, that cheese is so good. I'm
It's
glad
good, isn't it?
I'm glad I got to ask for a second plate for tomorrow. This is your video of your retail in space, which is quite different than what it was pre-COVID, it appears. And so how has COVID, so this is when you walk in off the street, y'all, this is the space. You can see front and center some of the major awards that were won, but how has COVID impacted your business over the last 6 months?
You know, it was devastating at first. You know, we lost all of our restaurant and food service businesses. And then the grocery stores, a lot of the cheese departments in the bigger grocery stores are run through the deli department. A lot of these things that you're looking at right now are all made in Utah by our friends. But then it started to pick up because people like you, John, got innovative and creative and started doing mail order and Zoom meetings, et cetera. But I'll tell you, our biggest concern when it all hit was, you know, our 44 employees. We were not getting POs, so we knew that we were not going to be able to continue to make cheese at the rate we were, because we were going to get a milk bill for a couple $100,000 the next week or next couple of weeks, and we weren't going to be able to pay for it because we didn't have POs. But I'll tell you, our biggest concern was our employees, and not, you know, if they're not working, they're not making money. And so I'll tell you, this was a godsend for us. We were speaking with our dairies who were dumping milk in the ditch because they had nowhere to send it. We talked with the food banks that were in desperate need of cheese. And then lastly, we talked to a cooperative in the area called Dairy West. And they, again, I mentioned the Got Milk commercial. These co-ops around the country will basically take in a nickel for every 100 pounds of milk that they milk, and they put it in a rainy day fund. And Dairy West came in, they bought the milk, they paid for our labor, and we were able to donate the cheese that we made. So for 6 weeks, we did nothing but make cheese for the food bank. And wow. It was amazing. It was amazing because the food bank got cheese, our dairy got paid a nominal amount for their milk, and we just got enough money to pay the employees, and wow, it saved our butts. So it was amazing.
How fortunate. I mean, you know, nothing, you certainly didn't know about that until you needed to know about it.
Well, it goes back to this. I mean, John, I could call you up or you could call me up tomorrow and we would do whatever we could do to help each other out. And, you know, it's just a lesson in life. If you have a good relationship with people, when things are tough, you can say, I need some help here, guys. And we all got together and we were able to donate over 130,000 pounds of cheese to the food banks. And it was really good for everybody. So, but.
Wow. Well, you're amazing. I don't know about anybody else, but I joined the Clean Plate Club tonight. I am all out of my half pound of cheese and my belly couldn't be happier. And so I see here, somebody was just saying how Hatch chili cheese can be sometimes heavy-handed, and this came out just perfect.
Thank you.
Said she loves Beehive cheese. For those people that don't know, there's an option for a monthly subscription from y'all to direct ship, which is great. Some of these products, you can, you know, if you can't go to find it in a store, because not all of these 6 items are within all the stores in Austin. You can order offline from Pat directly.
Or from John.
Well, we only have 2 or 3 at a time. We're spotlighting Promontory this year in most of our gift boxes for the holidays, which is going to be, I'm really proud of and excited. And so, briefly, if there's no other questions, I do just, it's a good question to ask. What's in store for Beehive Cheese in the future?
So you mentioned that we're a family organization. Our boy is now my boss. He's the sales guy, and Tim's boy is both of our bosses now. He's the president of the company. And those 2 guys are rocking it. We're trying to keep up. And so we're turning it over to the next generation, and they are doing an amazing job. It's pretty fun that both of them started when they were like 13 years old making cheese. And so, you know what? We're having fun. We're working hard. We're developing and nurturing the relationships. Our slogan is making friends with cheese. And we just, whether it's a small cheese shop in Austin or somebody online or, a grocery store, it doesn't matter. We love our customers. We love what we're doing, and we're hoping to be around for a long time.
And we hope so too. And I'll tell you what, I'm really glad you quit your job. Very grateful.
I'm going to show you my wife. This is the one that made it all possible.
Thank you for saying it today.
When I told her I was going to quit my job and go make cheese, she laughed and she said, "Go for it if that's what you want to do." And anyway, we wouldn't be here without our wonderful wives.
Yeah, I agree. Kendall said the same thing when I said I'm going to quit my job.
Right.
Takes a little, a wonderfully strong woman to put up with that. So we're blessed. So, well, Pat, that was an awesome class. Thank you, everybody, for coming and spending the night with us. I've got a huge smile across my face. As I said at the beginning, the energy that Pat gives is incredibly warm and sustaining, and it's always there. He's always there if you need him, as I have in the past. And so thank you, Pat, for spending the night with us. What I'd like to do is take everybody off mute, since we've been on mute this whole time.
Oh, cool. That would be fun.
Just so that they can either say thank you, scream and dance, whatever it is that they want to do. Y'all, you were amazing guests. Thank you for your participation. But here's an opportunity just to say thank you to Pat or ask questions. Here's an opportunity just to say thank you to Pat or ask questions.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you. The hatch chili was amazing.
Loved everything. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you.
It was amazing. I don't know which was my favorite tonight.
Oh,
I'm going to stick with the Red Butte because that flavor is still lingering.
So good.
isn't that nice? That is actually a factor of whether a cheese makes it or not, is what's going on in your mouth 5 minutes after you taste it. It's like, oh, wow, I got to have some more of that. So anyway. John, you're amazing. Give Kendall a big hug and the kiddos.
I will. And you just stay safe and stay warm and stay healthy.
We will.
Y'all everybody have just an incredible night. Thank you, Pat.
You too. Thank you. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.